Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jack Canfield, and my guest today is Dr. Vicki Matthews, who is a sought-after physician and a relationship coach. And Vicki is also the author of a wonderful new book entitled The 5 Elements of Relationships: How to Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anyplace. Welcome to the show, Vicki.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, I think everyone I know would like to know how to experience the subtitle of your book, How to Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anyplace.
And you can do it too.
I know. So, well, is that, we'll talk more about it, I'm sure. But, after reading your book and discovering what I was and what my wife was in terms of these elements that we're going to talk about, it's been everything we talk about for the last couple of days. We're having so much fun with it, but people don't know what we're talking about yet, so we'll get there. So here you are. You're a naturopathic physician. What led you to write a book about relationships?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I work with a lot of people that aren't very well. I mean, cancer and things like that. And you can't heal if you have emotional issues. You can't heal well, let's put it that way. And one of the biggest issues for people is how they get along with the people in their life. How are they getting along with their kids or their husband or their mother-in-law or whatever. And it's really not just limited to certain couples. If you look around our country right now, we have 40 million lawsuits a year.
Wow.
We have the third highest divorce rate of any country in the world, and we're only behind Belarus and the Maldives, which are rather small countries. Also, half of our millennials are already in relationship counseling. It's good that they're in counseling, but it says they're not getting along. So I realized it really wasn't me or my family or my group of friends. That seemed to be kind of a problem all around. So it was something that I wanted to explore.
And so how did you get started on this focus? So you're trying to help people get along better.
Yeah.
It's not normally what a physician's doing, and you're doing it in a very unique way, which we'll talk about. How'd you get started on that?
Well, like anybody, it was based on a personal experience. Several decades ago, I'd moved to a new apartment. I graduated from college and I got married all on the same weekend. And that began my journey with Mark, the love of my life, who is still my husband. And 2 weeks after we got married, we were in Chicago. One of my best friends out in LA got married. So we drove, 2 weeks into our marriage, we drove from Chicago to LA. And if you've ever done that, you have to go through the Mojave Desert. Anyone who's ever been in the Mojave Desert knows there is nothing there. It is rocks and sand and rocks, no cars, no police, nothing. So we're driving through the Mojave Desert and my husband is driving the speed limit. It's like, there's no one here. Can we speed this up? So I did. I looked at him. I said, can we speed this up? And he turned and looked at me like I had 4 heads. And he said, we're already going the speed limit. So we did the speed limit through the Mojave Desert. And it hit me, oh my God, I love this man dearly. I'm not sure I like him. It was sort of scary. But I just kind of put that on the back burner, only 2 years of marriage, or 2 weeks of marriage. And then I kind of started looking around and I realized a lot of my friends weren't getting along very well, or they weren't getting along with their sister, or I heard complaints about a mother-in-law. So I really started being open to the idea that there has to be more here. And that's when I went back to my medical studies, I found the 5-element model from traditional Chinese medicine. We did several units on the history of medicine in the different countries. And the 5-element model basically is something the Chinese developed thousands of years ago to explain phases in a cycle. So in the course of a year, there are seasons. In the course of a lifetime, there are stages. And they named these phases water, wood, earth, fire, and metal. And basically these 5 elements, if you will, describes beginning, middles, ends, highs, lows, the whole banana, so to speak. And what's really cool is that they relate to each other. So it wasn't just this static model. There's activity, there's interaction in all of it. And I started realizing, oh my God, the people are in here. We're in here. We're part of nature. We should be in here. And so it's not just water as an element. There is a personality in us that has water tendencies to be quiet or to be inner directed. There are wood tendencies. There are fire, outgoing, fun, enjoyable. And while I see us having all 5 of these actually in each of our beings, one of them is primary, one of them is dominant, and I call that our primary elemental personality. and how I'm a wood personality. I'm a let's get things done, make it happen, get there faster type of person. And my husband is a metal type of person, and that's more detail oriented, follow the rules. The rules are there because they matter and because they make sense. Metal sort of sits at the end of the cycle, actually, and so can look back and say, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. Let's keep what worked and get rid of the rest. It's a little like a gardener saying, okay, I've grown this zucchini. I'll keep the zucchini fruit, but I'm going to get rid of the vine. Metals are wonderful at making that discernment. So he going back to the Mojave Desert, he decided following the rules was the right way to go. And for me, getting there fast is the right way to go. So it's been a real journey. And I started explaining it to my patients, and I taught some classes, and people were like, oh my God, there's my aunt. Oh my God, no wonder I hate her. Oh my God, no wonder we fell in love. And people, when I taught that, people said, can I read about it? I want to read more about it. And for years, 5 or 6 years I've been teaching this, and I finally just had time to write the book. So,
well, I love it. First, I love your book. So let's talk about how the system works a little bit. Give us more insight into the types. And
so there are graphics that are in my book that there's actually a graphic representation of the model. But the important thing is really how they relate. So if you think about water, we're going to use nature as our guide for this. So we're going to do a little exploration of nature. Let's take water. And how does water interact with wood? Well, water feeds trees. Trees have to have water to grow. So water is very nurturing to wood. And if taking that to a personality, that would be a water person would be nurturing to a wood person. Would feel like they're in their corner, so to speak. But then let's go to metal. Metal at the end of the cycle, opinionated about things. That really, metal is... metal chops wood. That's the best way to describe it.
Right.
So, but it's a good thing, and I'll give you an example from my life. When we were married, maybe 5 or 6 years, we owned a condo, and we had a Christmas tree up, and what had happened was I decided it was too crowded and we needed to take out a wall. So I came downstairs one morning. I said, okay, I think we should knock this wall out. Let's get started. And again, I'm the one with 4 heads that time. He's like, are you kidding? The Christmas tree's still up. This isn't the right time. Let's be prudent here. So his reminding me that, yes, you shouldn't knock a wall down with a Christmas tree up, that was a good way to control me. That was a good way. Another thing he'll do is, in the years we've been married, he's learned you don't stop a wood, you help them turn right or left at a barrier. Otherwise, they don't like that very well. So he will say, have you thought about this instead? We've been married long enough, we've kind of gotten that down. But for anybody, you have metal tendencies and you have a lot of wood people around you. So you've probably learned, as a wise man that you are, that to just say, no, that's a bad idea, probably doesn't work too well with those wood people. But if you say, oh, okay, that's interesting, but what if we do this a little differently, that probably works really well.
Yeah, I'm going to say, have you considered this?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of wood with water. But think about it. So water feeds wood, but what does water do with fire? Well, water puts out fire in nature. And while that may seem like a bad thing, fiery people are just that. They're fiery, they're outgoing, they're exciting, they're let's party, in all the good ways. But sometimes too much fire, as we can see in nature, especially lately, is not a good thing. So it's good to have water there. So every relationship that every elemental personality has with every other person has a good possibility every way you look at it. Sometimes it may not feel so good, though.
Yeah, I think that's true. That what I love about the book is whatever you are, whatever the two combinations are, yes. There's the thing for me that I took away from it is that I understand the person better now, and I understand better how to relate to them from where I am. So I know all of our listeners are out there going like, well, what are the 5 elements? Could you do maybe 2 sentence or 3 sentence on each of the elements?
Absolutely can. Yes. Yeah. So water personality is kind of the winter. And that's when we're quiet, we're more inner yin directed. So waters are very philosophic. They love reading. They will hang with a few close friends, but they're fans of crowds or parties or anything like that. Issues matter to them. They like to be part of something bigger in their own quiet way. So that's the water personality. The wood personality represents spring, and spring is when things are bursting out. The buds are bursting through the bark, the leaves are coming out, and that's the make it happen personality. Woods look to the future. Woods will say, I know how to make that happen, or that is a great idea, let's do it now. Woods tend to not be very patient. They tend to, they see the future, let's just do it. What are we waiting for? They also can be, if stopped, they can get a little angry sometimes because they're already halfway down the road. So that's the wood personality. Really, as I said, waters are philosophers and, artists, musicians. Woods tend to be active, like in business. They will tend to be leaders. A lot of politicians have a lot of wood energy because, they want to make a difference. Woods also are great at standing up for the underdog. Fairness matters greatly to wood people. So the next around the model is fire. Fire people are exactly what you would imagine. They are gregarious, they're outgoing, they laugh a lot, people enjoy being with them as long as they stay balanced. That's another whole issue, is holding your personality in balance. But they also can burn out. They don't have good boundaries. They want to just keep going and going and going. So frequently fire people have to be mindful of that it's not fun and games all the time. You have to settle down, but their focus is now. So next around is earth. Any teacher, nurse you've ever met has a lot of earth energy in their personality. They are caring, compassionate people. They love home. They love family. They want everybody to be included. They want everybody to feel happy and loved. They adore food. A chef is going to have a lot of earth in them. So even though I may be a wood person, the next important element in my personality is earth, which makes me a really good physician and a pretty good teacher in terms of being caring and compassionate about my students. Same thing for you. You have a lot of earth energy as well. So that would be earth, and mixing them, almost anybody gets along well with an earth, but you have to make sure earths tend into codependency. So that's something they need to worry about. And then the last one is metal. Like I said, metals sit at the end of the cycle. They know what's happened. They can see it. They analyze it and say, wow, this was a really important piece of it. This isn't so important. We don't have to pay attention to that. They like to be known for their wisdom. They like doing this. It's almost automatic that they'll make these assessments and try and help us understand things, but they like credit for it. They like to be noticed for that.
Yeah, you've just accurately described myself.
Yes, I know, you're very metal, but you've got a lot of earth. I do.
And it's funny because for me, you see all the books behind me looking for what is it that's worked?
Yes.
Codify it into a system, the success principles, and then teach it.
Yep, that's metals.
Yeah.
That's metals. And Patty is a wood.
Yeah, I know. And I wish I'd known that better 20 years ago.
Well, and this is the cool thing about knowing it. It's not just like a parlor game, which it started out that way for us. It's like, oh, I wonder what you are type of thing.
Yeah.
But it translates into being able to get along with people. Just like Mark has expected, I will be the one to say, let's, knock out the wall. I expect him. I feel like almost I'm freer. I can go further on a limb because I know he's got my back and will literally pull me back and say this isn't a good time. I mean, it's as I think I've said in some of my promotional material. I have clients, so many clients and patients that a father really got. He was a football star. And he wanted his son to go out for football. And his son was a water. There's no water person that wants to go get beat up on a football field. His son was into cameras and photography. And it really helped this dad get that the way his kid was wired was not to be a jock. It was to be an artist of some kind or another, or a philosopher, or an author. It really helps you get the people in your life and where the strengths of your relationships are and where the weaknesses will be. And another thing that's in my book is when those weaknesses show up, ways to address them very quickly so you can get back on a good path.
Now, I believe on your website you have an assessment tool where people could go and answer some questions and determine what they are. Yes.
My website is vickimatthews.com. And I also have a free little booklet about this too that talks about what we've talked about here and gives people a little beginning introduction. And that's at getalongnow.com.
Okay, well, we'll put both of those up on the screen.
Great.
Any final thoughts before we go?
I think my final thoughts are now more than ever, we really need to figure out how to get along with each other. It's it's so important for our health. Again, as a physician, I can tell you one of the biggest things that takes people down is when they're not emotionally happy. So for health and for sanity and for building a better life and a better world for us and for our children, we need to figure out how to get along.
I'm curious, and you may or may, and it's coming out of the blue, but when you look at the political divide in our country, which is so acerbic right now.
It is, yes.
When you look at that, is it too simplistic to say that, that these two sides represent generally kind of two elements?
I think you can't say specific elements because they're going to be mixes. We all have all five of them in our personality. It's just what are we leading with? What I think it comes down to, and I'm going to try really hard not to show my bias here, is people that are more self-focused and people that are more focused on the common good. And any element can be self-focused and focused on the common good, but I would say probably people that are more focused on the common good, honestly, would be some woods, because woods want fairness, and a lot of earths. And people that are focused on their personal good will be usually metals, or because they know they're right. They've seen it. I mean, they are right so many times. They've seen the cycle. How can you argue with them what they've seen?
Right.
But also that can move into a desire for personal acknowledgement, success, etc. And woods have a lot of that as well. So it's more where they're wired in terms of what their priorities are.
Sure. Okay, cool. Well, I do think we need a lot of healing in all of our relationships. So whether it's one-on-one or group to group. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been a real joy. Take care.
Me too. And also thanks to all of you watching this for joining us today as well. And I want you to make sure to tune in again next week when I'll have another guest whose insights, experiences, and wisdom can help you live a happier and more fulfilling life. And until then, remember that experiencing more joy and less stress in your relationships is possible. And I encourage you to get Vicki's book, The 5 Elements of Relationships. It can help you do that. All right. See you again next week. Take care until then.